the writing has been on the wall, and I think talking about that in a way makes it seem like people are like, oh, you don't know what the 49ers grand design is. I think as we transition to Trey Lance, one thing that's jumped out at me, because it has to be in this context, is that Trey has not necessarily been perfect. I actually think he's looked great. He does not look like a rookie. You would not know that he's a 21-year-old guy who's just been looking at this book for a couple months, and he's come in, he operates, he has command of the huddle. He's right on. To me, he's outplayed Jimmy in the first two practices.
Okay, let's talk Trey Lance.
Yeah.
What do you see from Trey? David, have you been at both practices?
I have, and I'm going to be there tomorrow. I'm going to be there tomorrow as well.
Good
and so, what I've seen from Trey, the first thing that stood up for me on day one is that, and I think Kyle was the first practice really kind of getting both quarterbacks outside of the pocket, trying to simulate some pressure where they're moving outside and have to improvise a little bit. Trey still makes the efficient throw. He's going to go to the read that's open, but he also takes risks, and not unnecessary risks, but going down field, and he had success with it. Yeah. There was a play that was characterized as a jump ball yesterday. It was not.
To Kittle?
Yes. Yeah. It was a dime.
Yeah.
And I think that what you saw today, there were a couple hiccups or a couple throws where, a little bit behind the receiver, but he has the talent to make slight mistakes and still make good throws, where the defender wasn't. Like I said, a couple plays, I think Dwelly stopped on a route. I think Kevin White might have fallen down. Yeah. He would have been 8 for 10 instead of 6 for 10. Overall, not perfect, but he moved the sticks.
Yeah. Jordan, what'd you see?
So my whole thing with Trey Lance, and I've watched so much tape of him. I've watched pretty much every throw he made from the coaches, all 22. He just is a natural thrower of the football. That's the one thing I kept coming back to. He just looked like a guy. Like I told David when we were sitting in the stands, like even if he never played baseball in his life, if you put him out in like a rec softball league, I feel like this guy would be just a natural athlete throwing the ball, and it translates very well, if that makes sense. So I saw the ball jumping out of his hands, and it really felt like it was just like a natural gift that he had. But the thing that really stood out to me was that there is still the fact that he is the rookie, and he is going to have a tougher time transitioning. He hasn't had much time outside of OTAs, I imagine, with these guys in a structured, environment. So as much as I think he has this natural ability, just the throwing motion, the mechanics, everything looks very fluid, and it looks like it comes very easy to him. He's not forcing it. It's not awkward. I did think he was a little bit late on a couple throws. There was one in particular where he threw it behind Debo, and Debo had to go back to his back shoulder. He ended up making a catch, and Trey Lance has the arm strength to have that half second or so of hesitation where he might be off, and he still has the velocity to get it there, which is a luxury we've seen the 49ers haven't been afforded in recent years. If you missed that timing window that Shanahan would set up with his play call, the play was either going to be a turnover or it wasn't going anywhere. With Lance, I think they're afforded the ability a little bit to have that growing pain of him adjusting to timing and adjusting to his receivers and getting used to all that. So I think he was great, but I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought he was perfect. He definitely had some throws that I thought he could have worked on. He had a couple that sailed. There was one that sailed over I'm playing. I think it was Travis Benjamin, maybe over the middle. He threw it, 3-4 feet over his head. But it's minor things that will get better over time. You expect these things in the first couple of days of camp. If this is still happening after the third preseason game going into the regular season, then I think it's a much bigger issue that would need to be looked at.
Yeah, and one thing that I loved is that his worst throw was his first throw. That's the one that Jordan was talking about, and he didn't sit there and pout. He collected himself. You could tell he was like, that's on me. Went back and he went to work. One thing of both
the one to Ayuk.
Yeah. And one thing that stood out for me too, his footwork. He's cleaned up a lot. That was one thing that they were looking at with John Beck and wanted to work on that element of his game. It looks clean to me. His movement skills is fluid behind the line of scrimmage. He's confident. His demeanor in the huddle, he's commanding it with. The way he comports himself, he does not look like a rookie. He looks like a guy who's earning his teammates' trust. And that's not hyperbolic praise. This is just 2 practices. But the fact that the first 2 practices, he's already looked like a serviceable starter in the NFL in a practice with these guys. And people say, well, he's not with the ones. He's with the skill position ones. He just doesn't give him the one offensive line. And when they put pads on, you're going to see the wrinkles that'll come out. We're only 2 practices in, but it's going to keep getting better.
Also, to be fair, he's not facing the first team defense either. That's something to keep in mind. But I think it's another thing to remember is that there just wasn't much film of Trey Lance. We've all watched the Trey Lance film. There's like there's like 30 minutes of it. It's not a lot. And that was 2 years ago. And I think when you see him in person, you kind of like struck by like, wow, like it's a new person. You know, he's a man now. And when you watch him, like the arm strength always kind of makes like, whoa, I haven't seen anything like this on this field since Colin Kaepernick. But you guys saw Colin Kaepernick. I mean, I already feel like this guy is much more naturally gifted than Colin Kaepernick really was. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, I won't slander Cap. I love Cap. I think that
you're Cap.
No, it's not. And I think the thing that's like it's like that knee jerk reaction to say, hey guys, we're not slandering a guy because we're, but no, he's a more, like Kyle said, and you know, Kyle does coach speak too. Yeah. No, it is. And he was the most pro ready quarterback in the draft. Kyle fell, by the way, what we're realizing is that Kyle was in love with Lance a lot longer than we thought.
Yeah.
All this stuff where he was like hedging and on the fence. We were learning that's not true. And so I think that's what's impressed me the most is the way he comports himself, the way he's coming in there. He's not phased. Teammates seem to really love him right now. And of course, he's good at the mic. He's polished in PR. He's got that high character that just like, you know, you're not going to phase him there. You're not going to catch him with a gotcha question. He's ready.
I wish he'd loosened up a little bit behind the mic, but that's what every rookie quarterback's like. You can't really talk out of turn like Jimmy over here dropping F-bombs. Can't really do that yet. That's okay. I understand.
And I think it's fair to point out too, like it's obviously early and he hasn't really been tested with much like adversity per se as in a Niners uniform. But I feel like he carries himself like a guy that you want to build your franchise around. Like he's somebody that I feel like has embraced the fact that he knows that the 49ers are a storied franchise, and it's been made pretty evident that they're banking on him to be the guy for the next decade or so. And he comes off to me as a guy who's not only, you know, embracing that challenge, but like welcomes it. And just his energy and his vibe walking around, and you know much better than me, Grant, but just the impression that I got was that he's a guy who really is just immersed and in love with this game. He loves being out there. And, you know, that's one of the things I've always appreciated about Kittle is that even when they're out there in the first week with no pads on, like these guys live for football. And I think
Warner was there for every OTA day. Yeah.
And that to me, those are the guys you want when you're paying them the big bucks and they're still willing to show up for the stuff that's voluntary. I think that does go a long way. And, you know, culture is very cliche. It gets thrown around a lot, but I think that the culture that Lynch and Shanahan and that current regime have built has made the Niners a very desirable place for players that are premier players that have options to go elsewhere. And you can see it rubbing off even on rookies like Lance, in my opinion.
Dizza Scraps has a real quick question for us. He says, Jose Cortez ended the Mariucci era. Kyle Williams ended the Harbaugh era. What player position will end Shanahan?
Well, it would be, we've talked about this. It would be Trey Lance not succeeding.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got 2 future first round picks. It's, again, we know that the love is there. And if the love is, you know, not rewarded with production in the first couple of years, you know, that's what would do it. And I personally don't see that happening. There's always in the realm of possibilities. But that's it. I don't think there's any other player that has that level of influence on Shanahan.
Yeah, it's an easy question. Hester says something that also stuck out with Lance is his footwork, speed in those drills. Seems extremely fast and light in his feet despite being 220. Yeah. Also, Rosen seems pretty heavy-footed, huh?
I'll let Jordan take that one.
You know, I'm all for them taking the flyer they took on Rosen, but yeah, he to me today. I mean, Sudfeld wasn't great either, so you could have gone either way. And Rosen, I agree with you. I think Rosen had the best single throw of the day.
It was a nice throw, right? But the rest of it was not a good day.
It was such a good throw that it kind of took. I was taken aback because yeah, and he's capable of those, but it's the 9 bad throws in between every one of those throws that makes it hard to get behind him, in my opinion. Because I know a lot of people want to move on from Jimmy right away, have Rosen backing up Lance.
Good point.
And the fact that they've been able to financially make it work with Jimmy, I don't know how they made the cap work. It seemed impossible to get all the deals done they did while retaining that $26.5 million salary. I can say, as somebody who definitely is for them moving on from Jimmy, I would much rather have Jimmy be in that building than risk having, in my opinion, a roster that can compete for the Super Bowl, and then you're stuck week 8 if Trey Lance gets hurt, particularly if you're going to be using him with design running and he's going to be mobile and being a little bit more susceptible to injury than a traditional pocket quarterback. I would feel much better with Jimmy coming in. If Rosen comes in and he has to start 5 or 6 games, I'm not feeling great about this season. He doesn't have it, man.
I don't either. I will say this, though. I am I'm one of those guys from in draft season. We know that they were trying to move Jimmy. We know that was happening. They want to move on. Back in January going through. I will not be surprised, and I've said this. People think you're being hyperbolic about it. I'm just saying, please don't be surprised if some team gets a little desperate or some team finds value in having Jimmy come in. The 49ers will be prepared to move him. They will be prepared to move him.
Houston could be one of those teams. Houston could be one of those teams.
Absolutely, and they're not the only ones.
Right.
I mean, there's teams that want to compete. And the 49ers, they, like Jordan said, they made the salary cap work. So because this roster is so good and because this could be a Super Bowl contending team, and if they can afford to keep him this year and know he'll be off the books next year, great. However, if they find an opportunity to cash in while the selling point is high, I don't think Kyle's going to be afraid to do that. I don't think that's as crazy as it sounds.
But I do. I'm with Jordan in the sense that it would really make you feel better about doing that if Rosen could show something, if Sudfeld could show something. And so far, these guys are getting like 4 throws a day, and neither one's tearing it up. And I like Rosen, and I can't say that. I can't sit here and say that he's tearing it up. He's not. He made one nice throw though, and I'm gonna remember it the rest of my life. What a throw! What a throw it was! I can picture it right now. All right.